Hi guys! Today I want to tell you about cultural differences between Russians and Americans. It's really interesting topic and you can be surprised by some facts because we have so many stereotypes that actually are not true. So the first stereotype. The biggest stereotype is for me that Russians drink vodka all the time. Maybe there is some truth, but it doesn't mean that all Russians do it. Moreover, Washington Post gives interesting statistics. So, how many Americans think that drinking alcohol is morally unacceptable? There is 16% of American citizens that agreed with this issue. What do you think about Russians? You think it should be less? You would be surprised to know that 44% of Russians agreed that to drink alcohol is bad. It doesn't show that Russians drink less, but at least they think that it's bad. The fact that Russians are more likely than Americans to find drinking morally unacceptable might surprise those aware of Russia's love for vodka. Second cultural difference is smiling. People in the US smile a lot, and it's just an act of politeness, while in Russia, smile is always personal and informative. So it will be difficult for you to find many people in Russia who will smile in the street to unknown people. But if someone smiles at you in Russia, it means that they want to show that they sincerely like you, or it's just a sarcastic smile. Third culture clash is the expression "How are you?" The answer American gives, of course, is fine, and it's very easy. But in Russia, you'll never hear this answer. If you ask this question, you should be ready to hear a long story about what happened last week and about some news. But you'll never hear just the answer fine, and that's all. If Russian answers you in this way, it means he doesn't want to talk to you or he doesn't trust you. Probably if you ask Russian guy, how are you, he will answer you, хорошо, because I bought an apartment and I have a good deal and things are going well and so on. It's interesting fact that psychologists at the University of Michigan have shown that Russians are open embrace of negative experiences, and it might ultimately be healthier, resulting in fewer symptoms of depression. So I think it's cool to be open-minded. Fourth cultural difference is mobility. Americans move a lot, while in Russia many people still live all their lives in the same town they were born. Of course, nowadays it's changing, and many years going abroad and study abroad, but still people who are older, they still living in their city where they were born. Fifth cultural difference. There are also some key gaps when it comes to social values, such as approval of homosexuality. So Washington Post asked, do you think homosexuality is immoral? And what do you think? 37% of American citizens agreed with this. And in Russia, it's much more. It's 72% of Russians agreed that homosexuality is immoral. Sixth cultural difference is tips. The size of tips in Russia is 10%. And still, I think this statistic is from big cities such as Moscow or St. Petersburg. And usually people tip at restaurant, taxi, and have salons. But in the US, the tips are 20%, and tipping is much more expected. Interesting cultural difference that in US people don't remove their shoes as soon as they enter someone's home, unless they're really picky about their floors and ask to do that, which happens not often. Russians almost always take off one's shoes at home and when they go to someone. Eighth fact about cultural difference between Americans and Russians. Unfortunately, Americans speak bad different languages. Arne Duncan pointed out in Forbes that only 18% of Americans report speaking a language other than English, while 53% of Europeans and increasing numbers in other parts of the world can converse in a second language. While 57% of Russians know at least the basic level to speak a foreign language. So it's English, 38% of the population speaks this foreign language. It's German, 19%, French, 3%, and Spanish, only 1%. Ninth cultural difference is food. American and Russian cuisine is very different. So I'll tell you about some national dishes in Russia. First of all, it's щи. If to translate it, it's like cabbage soup. Had been the predominant first course in Russia cuisine for over 1,000 years. And if you want to try it, don't hesitate, but you should know that it has very special taste, so be ready for it. Then it's pelmeni, a traditional Eastern Europe, mainly Russian dish. And котлеты, you can call it kotletki, are small pan-fried meatballs. In US there are Thanksgiving turkey, pumpkin pie, hamburger, hot dog, donut, apple pie, and so on. Tenth cultural difference between Americans and Russians is that Americans speak very loud. And I don't know, it's just my impression or it's one of those stereotypes, but I think it's really true because when I see, even when I hear some Americans, I can understand that they speak very loud compared to other people who are near. However, there are things that I found very similar and shared between these two cultures. First of all, it's superiority. Russians and Americans both consider their country the greatest in the world. Being strong military is a big deal for both. Then it's huge difference between rich and poor. In both countries, rich live in their own parallel country inside a country. And here is a list of countries with 10 or more billionaires in 2015. Thanks to Wikipedia, I have this list. So we can see that United States is in the first place. There are 536 numbers of billionaires there, and the richest of the country is Bill Gates, as we all know. And we can find Russia in fifth place, and there are 88 numbers of billionaires there, and the lucky guy, the richest of the country, is Vladimir Potanin. And other common thing is barbecue and beer, but in Russia people say picnic. People like to enjoy barbecue and beer with friends in both countries. So it was cultural differences between Russians and Americans and some common themes. So I hope you like my video and subscribe for my channel to see my next videos, and have a good evening or have a good day, I don't know, and bye.